I used to be a Weird Warriors kid. Now I'm a Weird Warriors adult. Each week, I'm discussing a chapter of the iconic books by Aaron Hunter. My name is Charlie, and in today's episode, I will be talking about Chapter 4 of Book 1 of the series The Prophecies Begin, titled Into the Wild. Join me on this adventure into the world of warrior cats. Hello. It has been a long time. I'm at a new podcast set. This is my creative office in my new apartment. So I've been very busy with graduating from college and moving to a new apartment. So my apologies for the long pause in this podcast. But I'm back, and I really want to try to stick to doing this every week. I've been on a vacation while I've been settling into this apartment, and I'm finally recording an episode. But tomorrow's my last day of this vacation, and then I'm going back to work. So I have to figure out a schedule of how to get these out each week. Without getting burnt out, because I really enjoy this and I don't want to stop. I want to keep going, at least for the first book. I want to finish one book at least, but ideally I want to go for many weeks. Okay, so let's get into this chapter. So the chapter art for this one appears to be a cat looking at a leaf falling. I'm not sure which cat this is supposed to be. But this is coming right after the last line in the previous chapter where it was revealed that Redtail is dead. So shocked yells rose from the clan cats and echoed through the forest. Ravenpaw staggered slightly, and it says this is pretty graphic, his right foreleg glistened, wet with blood that flowed from the deep gash on his shoulder. He says, "We met 5 RiverClan warriors beside the stream not far from the Sunning Rocks. Oakheart was among them." And Greypaw says to Firepaw that Oakheart is the deputy of RiverClan. He's one of the greatest warriors in the forest. Lucky Ravenpaw. Wish it could have been me. And I'm frustrated that Greypaw is more focused on being jealous of Ravenpaw in this moment than worried about him. Like, Ravenpaw just said Redtail is dead and then is bleeding. And Greypaw is like, "Oh, no fair. I wish I could have been there with Oakheart." But he's silenced by a fierce glance from Small Ear. And Ravenpaw says, "Redtail warned Oakheart to keep his hunting parties out of ThunderClan territory. He said the next RiverClan warrior to be caught in ThunderClan territory would be killed, but Oakheart would not back down. He said his clan had to be fed whatever we threatened." Ravenpaw says that's when the RiverClan cats attacked. It was hard to see what was happening. The fight was vicious. I saw Oakheart had Redtail pinned to the ground, but then Redtail... Suddenly, Ravenpaw's eyes rolled in his head and he lurched sideways and he falls off the high rock, which, well, I guess cats always land on their feet, but he fainted, so I don't know. That seems like it's called the high rock. It seems like that would be painful to fall from there. A Ginger Queen calls for Spotted Leaf. I couldn't remember who that Ginger Queen is. And then the pretty tortoiseshell Firepaw had noticed sitting beside Greypaw earlier comes over and says that Ravenpaw's wounds aren't fatal, but she needs to get some cobwebs to stop the bleeding. She says, "It's all right, Golden Flower," so that Ginger Queen is named Golden Flower. I forgot about that character. And then a mournful howl is heard, and a massive dark brown tabby comes in carrying. This is like depressing how it describes it. Between his sharp teeth, the warrior held not prey, but the lifeless body of another cat. He dragged the tattered creature into the center of the clearing. Firepaw craned his neck and glimpsed a flash of bright ginger tail hanging limply in the dust. And now the grief really hits Graypaw, and he drops into a crouch and cries, "Redtail." "How did this happen, Tiger Claw?" demanded Blue Star from the high rock. And I want to mention, I appreciate that the narrator is careful to stick to Firepaw's point of view, in that all of these character names, which we already know from previous chapters, are not revealed until other characters say the names, because Firepaw hasn't matched the cat with the name yet. That happened within these couple pages with Spotted Leaf, Redtail, and Tiger Claw, and Golden Flower. So I just appreciate that. And then Tiger Claw says, "He died with honor, struck down by Oakheart. I couldn't save him, but I managed to take Oakheart's life while he was still gloating over his victory. Redtail's death was not in vain, for I doubt we'll see RiverClan hunters in our territory again." And then the Morning Cats share tongues with Redtail one last time. And then Graypaw says, "His spirit may have left to join StarClan, but the clan will share tongues with Redtail one last time." And this is our first time getting a definition of StarClan when Firepaw asks, "StarClan?" And Graypaw says, "It's the tribe of heavenly warriors that watches over all clan cats. You can see them in Silverpelt." Graypaw explains that Silverpelt is that thick band of stars you see each night stretching across the sky. Each star is a StarClan warrior. Redtail will be among them tonight. So, basically, the Milky Way. And then Graypaw goes to share tongues with Redtail. And then Blue Star jumps down from High Rock to also share tongues with Redtail, and all the other cats back away. And then Blue Star says, "Redtail was a brave warrior. His loyalty to ThunderClan could never be doubted. I always relied on his judgment, for it bore witness to the needs of the clan, and was never swayed by self-interest or pride. He would have made a fine leader." And then Graypaw says that Dustpaw will be sad, and explains to Firepaw that Dustpaw was Redtail's apprentice, the brown striped tabby over there. I wonder who his new mentor will be. And Graypaw says that Blue Star's going to sit with Redtail all night. He was her deputy for many, many moons. She won't want to let him go too quickly. He was one of the best warriors, not as big and powerful as Tiger Claw or Lionheart, but quick and clever. And then Firepaw admires Tiger Claw's strength and notices that one of his ears was split into a deep V shape, which I think it's interesting that it's spelled V-E-E, and a thick scar sliced through the bridge of his nose. I'm going to Google the V thing because I'm just curious. V definition. The letter V. A thing shaped like a V. That is so interesting. V-E-E is a word. I did not know that. Okay. And then Tiger Claw goes over to Ravenpaw, where Spotted Leaf is treating him with cobwebs. And I just want to Google that real quick. Are cobwebs an effective Band-Aid? Are cobwebs effective Band-Aid? Let's see what Google AI says. Spiderwebs have historically been used as a type of wound dressing and have several properties that might suggest some efficacy, including ability to stop bleeding. Spider webs are rich in vitamin K, a coagulant that helps with blood clotting, potentially aiding in stopping bleeding from minor cuts. Some spider webs are thought to possess antifungal and antiseptic properties, which could help minimize the chances of infection. Some traditional uses suggest that treating an open wound with a cluster of spiderwebs could help it dry out faster. Okay, my phone ran out of storage for filming, so I took a break to clear some storage and pet Lucky, and now I am back. So where were we? The cobwebs. So as Spotted Leaf is treating Ravenpaw with the cobwebs, Greypaw says, Ravenpaw seemed really shaken up. He's always been a bit jumpy, but I've never seen him this bad before. Let's go and see if he's woken up yet. So they go over and settle themselves a respectful distance away to wait until Tigerclaw had finished speaking. So, Spotted Leaf, Tigerclaw said, how is he? Do you think you can save him? I've spent a lot of time training him up, and I don't want my efforts to be wasted at the first battle. And Spotted Leaf teases, yes, a pity if, after all your valuable training, he dies in his first fight, eh? And Tigerclaw asks if he'll live, and she says, yes, he just needs to rest. And then he jabbed Ravenpaw with one of his front claws. Come on then, get up. And Firepaw's like, look at the size of that claw. So, it's what he's named after, of course, Tigerclaw. And then I love what Spotted Leaf says here. She says, not so fast, Tigerclaw. This apprentice needs to keep as still as possible until the cut has healed. We don't want him opening his wound by jumping about trying to please you. Leave him alone. Like, thank you, setting boundaries. And Firepaw found himself holding his breath as he waited for Tigerclaw's reaction. He guessed that few cats dared to give orders to the warrior like that. But then Spotted Leaf says, even you know better than to argue with a medicine cat, Tigerclaw. And he says, I wouldn't dare argue with you, dear Spotted Leaf. And then as he turns around to leave, he notices Greypaw and Firepaw and asks, Greypaw, who's this? The new apprentice. He smells like a kitty pet. I was a house cat, Firepaw meowed boldly, but I'm going to train to be a warrior. And then Tigerclaw looked at him with sudden interest. Ah, yes, now I remember. Bluestar mentioned that she had stumbled across some stray kitty pet, so she's actually going to try you out, is she? My storage ran out again, so it's quite a while later now, and hopefully it won't happen a third time. Anyway, as Tigerclaw stalks away, Firepaw asks, do you think he likes me? And Greypaw says, I don't think Tigerclaw likes any apprentices. Then Ravenpaw stirred and twitched his ears. Has he gone? He mumbled. Who, Tigerclaw? Replied Greypaw. Yep, he's gone. And Firepaw says, hi there, about to introduce himself, but Spotted Leaf tells them to go away. How am I supposed to help this cat with all these interruptions? Firepaw realized she was serious, despite the lively glimmer in her warm amber eyes. And then Greypaw shows Firepaw around the ThunderClan camp more. He was clearly taking his duties as a guide very seriously. Greypaw is so cute. You know the High Rock already, he began. Bluestar always addresses the clan from there. Her den is down there. He lifted his nose toward a hollow in the side of the High Rock. Now this surprised me because I always pictured that den to be like under the rock. Like imagine this is the rock kind of like flat and jutting out, very big, and then the leader, Lucky's walking past the camera. The leader's den would be like under here, but it might actually be like a big boulder and then in the side. I don't know. And let's see. He says, her den was carved out many moons ago by an ancient stream. Hanging lichen draped the entrance, sheltering the leader's nest from wind and rain. I want to look up what hanging lichen looks like, because I'm not sure if I've seen it. Hanging lichen. Oh, okay, I have seen that. It's pretty, but also spooky. And for some reason is reminding me of the Muppets. I just love how things are described in this book, especially the cats' dwellings, which we're about to get more of those descriptions. The warriors sleep over here. Firepaw followed Graypaw to a large bush a few paces away from the high rock. There was a clear view from here, right down to the gorse entrance into the camp. The branches of the bush hung low, but Firepaw could see a sheltered space inside, where the warriors made their nests. Okay, so it's a big bush, and inside all the warriors sleep. The senior warriors sleep nearest the center, where it is warmest, explained Graypaw. They usually share their fresh kill together over by that clump of nettles. The younger warriors eat nearby. Sometimes they are invited to join the senior warriors for eating, which is a big honor. These are such specific details. Graypaw's giving such a good tour. Now here we have another warrior's vocab word, fresh kill, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's recently killed prey. And I want to look up nettles, because I'm familiar with stinging nettle, but let me see, nettle is non-stinging. Several plants can be mistaken for stinging nettles, but don't have the stinging hairs. The most common are dead nettles, which include white dead nettle and red dead nettle. Also, a subspecies of stinging nettle, fen nettle, has very few or no stinging hairs. Okay, I'm learning so much about plants. Then Graypaw explains that the queens share warrior quarters when they work as warriors, but when they are expecting kits or nursing them, they stay in the nest near the nursery. Yeah, so I think queens are the female cats that are adults. The elders have their own place on the other side of the clearing. Now this is distinguishing senior warriors from elders. I know in a past episode I was wondering about what the difference is, but I guess senior warriors are just older warriors and not considered elders yet. I wonder what qualifies someone as a senior warrior. Like, is there a specific amount of time they have to be a warrior before they become a senior warrior? Or is it just kind of vaguely older, more experienced warriors? I don't know. So then they go over to visit with the elders, who are tucking into a plump young rabbit. Now I want to look up that tucking into term. I wonder if it's a British thing, because it sounds like digging in, like when you're eating something, but I've never heard tucking in describing eating. Usually I think of like tucking into bed. So let's see. Tucking in versus digging in. Let's see what Google AI says. Tuck in and dig in are both informal phrases, but they have different meanings. Tuck in typically means to start eating with enthusiasm, often used as an invitation or encouragement to begin a meal. Dig in also means to start eating, but can also mean to commit to a position or task with determination. I'm going to look up, is tuck in a British phrase? According to the AI overview, yes, tuck in is indeed a British phrase with a specific meaning related to eating. While it has other meanings in English, including making someone comfortable in bed, in British English, tuck in commonly means to start eating with enthusiasm. Well, there's our answer. Anyway, so they're tucking into the rabbit, and Graypaw says Dustpaw and Sandpaw would have brought them that. One of the apprentice's duties is catching fresh kill for the elders. Hello, youngster, says Small Ear, and Graypaw says hello back. This must be our new apprentice. Firepaw, isn't it? Meowed a second Tom, and he has a stump where his tail should have been, and we find out his name is Halftail. He introduces himself to Firepaw and welcomes him to the clan. And Small Ear asks if they've eaten, and Firepaw and Graypaw both shake their heads, and they offer food to them. He says Dustpaw and Sandpaw are turning into fine hunters. Would you mind if these youngsters shared a mouse, One Eye? I forgot about One Eye and Halftail as characters. Hi, Lucky. Okay. Hi. You want to join the podcast? Yeah. Oh my gosh, you're so cute, Lucky. Hi. Thanks for visiting the podcast. It's interesting because One Eye's name has a hyphen in it because there's the two E's, the one at the end of one and the one at the beginning of I. I don't know if any other warrior cat's names have a hyphen, but that's cool that she has that. And we find out that she has a blind eye. And then Small Ear asks, "What about you, Dappletail?" And I also forgot about Dappletail. And she says that it's fine. And so Greypaw gets a large mouse from the pile of prey and drops it at Firepaw's feet. "You still not tasted meow?" "Mouse? You still not tasted mouse?" he asked. "No," Firepaw admitted. He suddenly felt excited by the warm smells that were rising from this piece of fresh kill. His whole body quivered at the thought of sharing his first real food as a clan member. "In that case, you can have the first bite." "Just save me some." Firepaw crouched down and took a large bite from the mouse. It was juicy and tender and sang with the flavors of the forest. Tell me why my mouth started watering when I read that. Before I recorded this podcast, I was like, oh my gosh, the way these writers describe the eating the prey, it sounds like they're eating the most delectable meal ever. Like, sang with the flavors of the forest. Like, oh my gosh. "What do you think?" asked Greypaw. "Fantastic," mumbled Firepaw, his mouth still full. I'm like, should I be doing voices for all these characters as I'm reading passages? I feel like that would be fun, but also kind of embarrassing. I don't know. And then the elders drop some lore about Bluestar. One Eye says, "Dappletail, do you remember the day many moons ago when Bluestar herself was appointed deputy?" And Dappletail says, "Oh yes, it was not long after she lost her kids." So now we know Bluestar has a tragic past. "She'll not be happy to be appointing a new deputy," Small Ear observed. "Redtail served her long and well, but she'll need to make up her mind quickly. According to clan custom, the choice has to be made before Moon High, after the death of the old deputy. At least this time the choice is obvious," meowed Halftail. And Firepaw looks around the ThunderClan camp, thinking, who could Halftail mean? To Firepaw, all the warriors looked worthy of becoming deputy. Perhaps he meant Tigerclaw. After all, he had avenged Redtail's death. Tigerclaw was sitting not far off, his ears angled towards the elders' conversation. And then Bluestar calls from the high rock and says a new deputy must be appointed. But first, let us give thanks to StarClan for the life of Redtail. Tonight he sits with his fellow warriors among the stars. And the sky is beginning to darken, and the cats look up at the sky. "And now I shall name ThunderClan's new deputy," Bluestar continued. "I say these words before the body of Redtail, so that his spirit may hear and approve my choice." Then Firepaw notices the hunger in Tigerclaw's eyes. "Lionheart," meowed Bluestar, "will be the new deputy of ThunderClan." Firepaw was curious to see Tigerclaw's reaction, but the Dark Warrior's face revealed nothing as he moved to congratulate Lionheart with a nudge so hearty that it almost pushed the golden tabby off balance. "Why didn't she make Tigerclaw deputy?" Firepaw whispered to Greypaw. "Probably because Lionheart has been a warrior longer, so he has a lot more experience." And Bluestar says Redtail was also mentor to young Dustpaw. "Since there must be no delay in the training of our apprentices, I shall appoint Dustpaw's new mentor immediately. Darkstripe, you are ready for your first apprentice, so you will continue Dustpaw's training. You had a fine mentor in Tigerclaw, and I expect you to pass on some of the excellent skills you were taught." I feel so bad for Dustpaw because his mentor was just killed, his dead body dragged into the camp, and he seems like traumatized and grief-stricken. And then he finds out that Darkstripe, who is pretty rude, is going to take over as his mentor. Also, Darkstripe was trained by Tiger Claw, so he might be quite the tough mentor. Darkstripe swells with pride and nods with acceptance, and then he goes over to Dustpaw, and they touch noses awkwardly. And Dustpaw expresses respect, but his eyes were still dull with grief for his lost mentor. Bluestar says, "I shall keep a vigil with Redtail's body tonight before we bury him at sunrise." She jumps down from the high rock and walks over to lie beside Redtail's body once more. And as those others closest to Redtail go over to mourn, Greypaw shows Firepaw towards the apprentice's den, which is a thick bush of ferns behind a mossy tree stump. He says all the apprentices share their fresh kill by this stump. How many apprentices are there? Not as many as usual, just me, you, Ravenpaw, Dustpaw, and Sandpaw. As Greypaw and Firepaw settled themselves beside the tree stump, a young she-cat crawled out from beneath the ferns. Her coat was ginger, like Firepaw's, but much paler, with barely visible stripes of darker fur. "So here comes the new apprentice," she meowed, narrowing her eyes. "Hello," Firepaw mewed. The young cat sniffed rudely. "He smells like a kitty pet. Don't tell me I'm going to have to share my nest with that revolting stench." Oh my gosh, first impressions. Wow. "You'll have to excuse Sandpaw," apologized Greypaw. "I think she must have a fur ball stuck somewhere." And I want to backtrack a little bit because it described Sandpaw as having a ginger coat, but much paler than Firepaw's. This made me wonder about the color ginger. I'm like, I usually think of ginger as being a redhead or red, like red fur. But because of the name Sandpaw, I always pictured Sandpaw being like the color of sand, like a pale tan. I don't think of her as a light ginger. So now I want to look it up, because then I realized, wait a second, the ginger that comes with like sushi is more of a very, very pale, I don't even know if you could call it tan, like an off-white. So why is the word ginger associated with more red tones? So now I need to look it up, like, why is ginger the word for red hair? According to the AI overview, the term ginger is used for red hair due to the reddish-brown or orange-brown color of the ginger root, which is similar to the color of some red hair shades. The term became more widely used in the UK and Ireland, and later in other English-speaking countries to describe people with red hair. While the color of ginger root is not bright red, it shares a reddish hue with certain shades of red hair, leading to the association. Okay. Ginger root. Okay, I see. So here's an image on Google Images that shows different kinds of ginger roots, and one of them is more like the color of Rusty, this one in the middle, and one of them, the one on the right, is more like the color of Sandpaw. Okay, I see. This makes more sense to me now. Thank you. Then we hear White Storm say, "Hold on, youngsters. Sandpaw, as my apprentice, I expected you to be a little more welcoming to this newcomer." "I'm sorry, White Storm," she purred, not sounding sorry at all. "I just didn't expect to be training with a kitty pet, that's all." It's just, I love Sandpaw. She's so funny here. "I'm sure you'll get used to it, Sandpaw," meowed White Storm calmly. White Storm says, "Now it's getting late and training starts early tomorrow. You three should get some sleep." And then Greypaw and Firepaw follow Sandpaw into the den. Inside the sleeping area, the ground was lined with soft moss, and the pale moonlight turned everything a delicate shade of green. The air was fragrant with fern scent, and warmer than outside. I love that description. It sounds so peaceful and cozy. "Where do I sleep?" Firepaw asked. "Anywhere, just so long as it's not near me," snarled Sandpaw, and Firepaw gathers some moss with his claws to basically form a pillow. When he had gathered his bed into a cozy nest, he circled it until it was comfortable and settled down. His whole body felt drowsy with contentment. This was his home now. He was a member of ThunderClan. And that is the end of Chapter 4. Whew, we got through it. I've done another episode after all this time. I'm very proud of myself, and even with me, running out of storage, we got through it, and it was fun. I love this book so much. Thank you so much for listening. This episode took me all day to make, several sittings, whether it was reading the book, trying to record a few times, and all of that. So I am proud of myself for doing this. And even though I basically have no one listening to the podcast at this point, I have to remind myself I'm mostly doing this for me. It is a passion project because I love warriors, and I wanted something to motivate me to read them again. So, yeah. But if I am able to share my love for warriors with the world and introduce a new generation to this series, that would very much make me happy. So, if anyone out there is seeing or hearing this, I would really appreciate if you subscribed to YouTube or whatever streaming platform you listen to. You can subscribe or follow with this podcast. And if you pay $5 a month on Substack, you can get access to the spoiler versions of these episodes, which are extended versions where I include clips where I talk about things I remember as I read the book that will happen later. And also you can see other exclusive, behind the scenes footage or unboxings or different things like that. So yeah, anyway, thank you so much for listening. I don't even remember if I had an outro for this video. Also, I've had my mascot for this podcast in my pocket this whole time, and I'm glad I remembered to allow this kitty to make an appearance, because I have to hide my LPS from Lucky or else he will attack them. So, yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next week. This has been Into the World of Warrior Cats.